Alrighty then, it's time for a double whammy video. Let's get this show on the road. And we're closing out this year with a Trundle and a Zac video. Yay! Let's do. Starting off with Zac first. Now, I know Zac used to be one of my go-to champions of all time, and he's still really strong in my opinion, and I still really do like playing him. But again, his new ultimate kind of still left a bad taste in my mouth. But still, I will go on to say that he's probably one of the safest, if not the safest jungler in the game, and one of the better first picks you can make. He's just super well-rounded and has very few weaknesses. You know, his biggest issue just tends to be being countered by team compositions rather than champions. He doesn't have that many negative matchups, and even those that he does have negatives are very flimsy. So, like, if you ever really wanted a jungler that, you know, you could say, hey, who can I pick here? Just throw in Zac. The worst things that can happen to you is you fight people like, you know, Janus, which I did, but that's why I kind of didn't focus on her. And still, one of my favorite traits about Zac is just how fast he can gank. Is because you don't have any mana restrictions and your E is just so good at approaching ganks. So it's like you can just murder the hell out of champions. And this Teemo at this point was raging in all chats saying, Yasuo, you're lucky Zac is ganking for you. Or whatever. Though this next gank against the enemy Maokai is really funny. Just because I didn't have an E and he was getting super aggressive on a character he probably wouldn't even be able to kill in time. So I just kind of walk up to him, hit him with my Q, and then hit a minion, and just bam, boom, the burst right there. That's the burst combo that Zac has now. If you can help it, you try to walk up to them and you use your W, but if not, you hit them with your Q, and then you hit them with something else. You slam them, and then you in between there you have pressed your W, so the slime pops out, and you do some damage. And then when the slam happens, you E on top of them, or you W, and then collect some blobs, and then W again. Later on, you can add your ultimate to the mix, and not even hold your ultimate, just a little burst. And you will see that, because I will do that against this little Teemo bastard. And you know, I'm giving him every reason to rage here. So yeah, that gank you saw, or attempted gank, was failed because Yasuo got a little too aggressive. He did apologize for that, but yeah, it's one of those cases where you have to wait for your tank or your initiator to go for it first. Anyways, I go in there, hit him with a Q, slam, and you see me just pop my W, and then I just use my ultimate for the quick thingy. The combo was different, obviously, because I had to approach with the with the E. So, you know, just kind of use your abilities on rotation depending on how you kind of had to initiate the fight. But still, though, I kind of really didn't need to use my ultimate there for the kill, but, you know, whatever. So, once again, I go against the Teemo, and this time, you know, Yasuo goes in with his ultimate, which it wasn't so bad, but he probably should have waited for me to be able to, like, bait him out with a Q or something. But still, that Teemo's really mad now, and he's all in all chatty, but you obviously can't read it because the replay doesn't have those, but whatever. But anyways, as I did say about, actually, no, this is fun. My ultimate has come back off cooldown already. And just the Teemo, just like, I'm making his life hell. He apparently insisted on going mid lane because he wanted to pick Teemo because Teemo tank is all the rage right now. But this is one of those key things about mid versus top lane. Why some top laners don't always work in mid lane, even if you're fighting an opponent that would normally be top lane too sometimes. I know Yasuo's going to know, but you know, Yasuo could be seen in top lane. The thing is, when you're in top lane, you're more defended because there's only 2 real avenues of approach for most junglers. 3 if they can do a direct gank or something like that. So it's a lot easier to defend. Mid lane, there's 4 avenues of approach that they can go to, and some of them are easy to ward against. The other 2 can be warded, but they can also be fought around it. So there's 4 to defend from. And someone like Zac can ignore most of that shit. He's got like a way longer range than some of these can even be defended from. And there are other junglers too who can avoid a lot of these avenues or just take weirder routes and just completely destroy you. So mid lane is like dangerous for certain champions who don't have great escapes or as great range or any of that kind of stuff. So either way, I love this right here. Just knock your heads together. And then they chase us, and then they realize that was a bad idea because I E back onto them, do my ultimate for a little burst, and we kill them all. Yeah. So yeah, just mid lane, Zac will abuse any mid laners who just cannot escape, and that kind of just goes for a lot of junglers too. So yeah, don't take it as a lesson. I love it when some people sort of do that, or they just because they just don't play flat out know not to do that. Like I said, during Champion Select, when I believe I picked Zach second, I picked Zach, and yeah, it was me and Malphite who were the first picks for my team, and the enemy team picked Teemo after that. And I believe they already knew who was going where, and at that point, I just gotta blame the fact that the Teemo probably did not know not to do that. I mean, if I had picked someone that wasn't as super like a gank monster like Zach, it might have been okay. Either way, you know, this game kind of went out of their control. Their team comp was honestly really weak. My team comp wasn't that strong either, but we technically had a lot of synergy in blowing at least most of them up. If we initiated really well, Yasuo would eviscerate them, and we'd probably take out some of their MVPs, like, well, their only MVP, Jhin, and probably kill another one in the Aftershock and all that other mess. So they'd have no damage, and then we just kind of beat them down and walk away from this. Yeah, their team composition relied a lot on Janna being able to protect people, but since bottom lane lost and I fed the crap out of my Yasuo, they're just donezo. It was kind of inevitable for this to happen to them. So now they're being sieged, and we can just pretty much go in at any point. And me and Yasuo are just going to be like the ultimate murder team at this point. I'm practically next to unkillable, so just readily on the fact that they don't have enough damage and won't kill anybody. That's actually important. And the only people who will die are people who stand underneath a tower for a while, like, you know, she just did. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Either way, like I said, Zach is just kind of one of the better champions to pick if you want to learn, because he's very forgiving. Even though not all of those abilities are just kind of, you know, pretty much click and use. You got to get used to his ultimate, and you got to get used to his Q, but they're not that hard to learn. So he's pretty much a prime champion for newer players. Plus, again, it's just having no mana, having most of your matchups be rather even, and most of anything that could happen to you just be like, "Lo, I'm just gonna walk away from this," is pretty good. It's pretty good for new players. And again, even more refined players can always add him to this repertoire, because he's, like, you know, he's one of those few junglers you can pick first and not have to worry about anything. And that's actually something that's very, I would say, hard to combine at this point now in the game. It's like, I can only name like, what, 3 safe first pick junglers, and Zach is already one of them. So, either way, this game was obviously a stomp. So now we're moving on to a more fun one. Trundle. And we all know just how much I love me some Trundle. Look at the enemy team composition. They obviously did not know that they shouldn't pick this way against Trundle, and I actually did pick them second. Their first picks were Vayne and Riven, which I pretty much went ahead and threw Trundle against them, because if I bite anybody as Trundle, they're, well, no, it was Shyvana and Vayne, sorry. If I bite anyone as Trundle, their AD goes down, and then if I rob all the stats from Shyvana, I'm probably not going to die. I go check for Shyvana because Trundle eats dragons. I don't find her, but she walks into me, and I do a lot of damage to her. She was already hurt, but when she saw that she wasn't going to kill me in time because she basically tickled my dick and did nothing, she pretty much decided to run and die. So, hooray for me. She knew... It's just one of those... I love this. Again, Shyvana right now is all the craze. So that means I get to pick Trundle a lot more. And a lot of these people do not know that Trundle is one of Shyvana's biggest counters. So I get to enjoy my Trundle Slaughterfest. Now, here's an interesting question that my fan brought up during one of my streams. Stonewall, why is Trundle so good? And I have to clarify to them, Trundle is not always the most, you know, common pick you're going to make. It's just a champion that is really good against what he's really good against. Like, extremely good against. Against everything else, he's average, or honestly below average. He's got really good strengths, as everybody knows. One of the strongest, if not the best duelist in the entire game. He's very self-sufficient, and his builds are varied and really strong. So, we'll go with that. I also want to point out one thing. This Riven, huge dick. We all know this. I mean, synonymous, it's, you know, Riven is synonymous with being an asshole, but I just want to point this other thing out. I have only a Tiamat, okay? Machete doesn't count. I only have a Tiamat and a potion, but a Tiamat only. I'm level 6. I do have double buffs. Right now the Riven is here just kind of, you know, dicking about. and she thinks, oh, he's gonna go back into his jungle right now after I scare her off. Just prepare yourselves. I don't know. Take whatever you need. Take a tissue or something. She's thinking, oh, you know what'll be fun? Let me surprise the Riven in this bush. I mean, the Trundle in this bush. She does all she can, and then like just bounce her back into fight. And even with her ultimates, like, what the fuck were you gonna do? It's a Trundle. She's had, look at all the items she had against me. All right. Okay. For those who are still surprised by the fact that Trundle counters a lot of champions and is pretty much unstoppable in 1v1 duels, especially with his ultimate. When Trundle bites somebody, he gives himself a ton of AD, and then cuts the enemy team's AD, or enemy champion's AD, by half the amount he gained. So, at max rank is 20, though in that one I had, I think, rank 4, or whatever rank it was, and it took away about 17.5 AD from the Riven. So that's basically taking away a longsword and a bit like two-thirds or something. Or basically taking away her longsword and her Doran's blade. That's quite a bit of gold lost, and gave me 35 AD. So that's giving me 3 longswords and then some, like, yeah, half of them with a longsword. So that's quite a bit. You can just watch me, you know, continuously maul her because she's super aggressive and a huge ass in all chat, saying like, "Oh my god, like that's totally fair that you lost." And then add the fact that I use my ultimate to take away her old crappy little stats and then take away some of her health too. And you got yourself a dead Riven. And that just kind of happens with any duelist. So a lot of people say, oh, you know, Trundle would lose to a duelist like Udyr because they see them, oh, Udyr does all this damage. Nah, the second the fight breaks out, Trundle could just maul people. And really skilled Trundle players can do crazy shit with their walls because the wall is very undervalued by a lot of players. Like, the wall stops a lot of hippity-skippity crap, and the fact that it has a slow around it is very underappreciated. Essentially, Trundle's wall does this crap where when you put it down, it stops anybody from moving forward, obviously. It's just a hard wall. So if they can't jump, if they can't flash over it, they have to walk around it, but they're slowed. So at that point, you're going to catch them, and you're going to murder them, and most champions will never be able to walk around that thing in time. So you see, like here in this case, Galio was forced to try to fight, or at least try to slow me down, but he kind of lets Shyvana be the one to take all the beating. He's like, oh, I got a scapegoat now, and he just decides to escape. Again, the Shyvana should have known better because, again, I always point out to that amazing video or that amazing fight in some videos before where I was level 9 Trundle, the enemy Shyvana was level 11, she had way more items than me, and I murdered her without much effort. Again, Trundle is just her ultimate counter. Anyone who has all the stats that Trundle could take away from you is just basically weak. And in this case too, the Riven jumps in but already bit her, so she basically tickles now. Again, taking away, at this point I had max rank Q, so taking away 2 longswords with the stats is pretty significant at this point in the game. And then just slowly kind of making her useless. Yeah, respect the Trundle's bite. But anyways, I was talking about the wall. Another cool thing you could do with the wall when you're fighting as Trundle, and why the slow is important, is because since it's near instantaneous, you can put it in front of you, and it gives you enough space between you and your opponent that most melee champions can't hit you between that. And why is that important in duels? In some cases, in some older videos I had done this, I'm fighting a Shyvana who has red buff and I don't, which in that case it might give her the edge enough to kill me. So what I end up doing is, while her burnout is going on, I put the wall between me and her, and it forces her back and it pushes me to the other side, so that she can't hit me with her burnout at all. And during that time, it's just running out. And if she tries to chase me to make sure she contacts that with me, the slow is putting her down, and I'm walking away from that while I have my W up or something. And then once it runs out, I re-engage her and kill her. It's just cool stuff like that. You have seen me do that with my wall sometimes, put it between me and an opponent, so it makes a lot of space between me and them, especially against melee champions. That's how Trundle can walk around. Because I've explained this before for Trundle. It's Trundle is probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest duelists in the game. And there's 2 types of duelists: the ones who just beat the crap out of you, they're sluggers, and there's the more tactile ones, the ones who outsmart you. Trundle's a combination of both because of the way he can use his skills. He can walk circles around you, but he's also strong enough to just beat you to death. And the double combination is really brutal. Although the lack of gap closers, or jumping around, does make him weaker against some other champions. Not exactly, you know, dying to them, but you can't kill them. Fucking Italy's. But yeah, I know. I went on a huge rant about that, but it's sort of important to point out because at this point, the enemy team hopefully realize that they're not gonna do anything against me. So they're really afraid of fighting me, and especially considering I have all these kills and all this power and all this health. Yeah, I'm basically become, you know, a juggernaut at this point, a godly character, you may. But yeah, Trundle deserves more respect. And like I was saying earlier, a fan did ask, you know, what makes him so strong, and it's for these reasons alone. Against most other compositions, Trundle's weaknesses do become more noticeable. He doesn't have hard crowd control. So that's a weakness. His initiation is actually one of the stronger ones, but against team compositions, it doesn't really do very much. So you can't rely on him to be your actual initiator against some compositions. He cannot carry, flat out. Like you might think in this game that I'm carrying, but it's not really the case. The only reason I get to do very much is because I abuse certain opponents, make them near worthless, and my teammates can come in there and just get amplified. He's a multiplier to a team composition and a divider to the enemy team. It's sort of like a Nunu effect, in which you kind of negate the effectiveness of some opponents, and therefore you make yourself way more valuable than they could hope to be. You beat them by making them worthless, and your moderate usefulness becomes amplified to greater amounts. Again, against some team compositions, Trundle just kind of doesn't really do very much except be this really fat dude who can occasionally kill some people. Though he also works as a tank destroyer, so there's that. And against single tank teams, he pretty much just wins the game for you, so there's that too. It's just one of those cases where against what he works in, he's extremely good, and in most other cases, he's average to the point where you probably should have just picked somebody else. But, and that's just being really honest about Trundle, right? So he's one of the few champions still left in the game that can be considered a very strong flavor pick, because most champions have either been made into generalized picks or, you know, quasi counters. But he's but you know, whatever, that's right decisions, right? Though I can understand not wanting to just allow complete total counters in the game because it completely makes some people's lives miserable, though it does let certain champions run rampant without any actual answers and make more generalized picks just overall stronger. But still, when I get to pick Trundle, it really shines, and I want to point this part out here. I'm going to get initiated on by the entire team. I'm going to use my ultimate when that's going to become clear. Right here, when I realize they're about to pounce on me, I'm going to take the stats from the tankiest champion on the enemy team, Shyvana. Boom, you see it right there happen. And all the damage they do on me doesn't matter. And then the second someone dies, I start getting healthy. That's one of the undervalued things about Trundle, and especially as a combination to the rest of what he does. So, everybody knows, I think it's 8% whenever somebody dies around you or something dies around you, you get 8% of your health back. Now, Trundle makes tanky characters worthless, right? Think of just think of a fat character like Cho'Gath, you ult him and make him spongy, and your team kills the crap out of him. You basically are going to heal quite a bit, 8% of their health. So that's quite a bit of health. So Trundle works as a really strong kind of aggro initiator, or especially if you have another tank or initiator like Alistair. You walk in there, make their tank a sponge, and blow him up with your team or blow him up yourself, because Trundle can become a good tank killer with a certain build, and they focus fire on you and take you down rather by a ton. But then the tank dies and you heal up quite a bit, and they just wasted a bunch of crap on you like they did right there in that little last team fight. That's another great trait about Trundle. Just very well self-sufficient champion built into himself that counters a lot of champions, and it only really works in those situations exceptionally well. But he's a good champion, especially when he works out. That's all I got about to say that, and that's the end of this year. So hooray for Trundle and Zac. And remember, if you enjoyed the video, make a comment below in the comment section, and also give the video a like. That helps the channel a lot more than you think.